Whatever you do isn't just fine. Okay. Most people's presentations suck. All right. They just do. They're terrible at presenting. And once they get videotaped and it's pointed out, they would agree they're terrible at presenting. And the great part is they don't want to be. And everybody can change and get way better, which is exciting. Because when you get up there and you feel connected, as opposed to like you're just like on stage and you're just like a show. But instead of like when you're connected, it's like you're the leader of the group. These people are all with you. And it's a totally different feeling.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Answering Legal's Everything Except the Law podcast. I am your host, Nick Werker. If this is your first time tuning in, this is the podcast where we share expert advice on all the parts of running a law firm that attorneys weren't exactly trained for back in law school. Now, a lot of what we typically cover on this show is how attorneys can improve their work performance outside of the courtroom. We have a ton of episodes on marketing, managing employees, adopting technology. But today we'll be going inside the courtroom and finding out what lawyers can do to improve their in-trial performance. Helping advise us on this matter is a 28-year trial attorney who currently serves as the CEO of Trial Lawyers University, Dan Ambrose. Dan joins us now. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Thanks a lot, Nick.
Can you tell us a little bit about your history as a lawyer and what made you want to get into training other attorneys?
Sure. I practiced a lot, like 60 hours a week for about 17 years and I was mostly doing criminal defense work. So I got the chance to do a lot of trial work because you get to try a lot in criminal cases, especially, if you don't have a really good relationship with all the prosecutors. I found myself at trial a lot, which was good and bad because nobody really trained me how to actually do the stuff. And I would go to a lot of conferences and maybe get one tidbit here or there, but it was just knowledge and theory. It was never any skills. And, I got better over time because I studied and practiced, but it was difficult because there was nobody really to tell you, okay, these are the skills you need to acquire to become an effective champion trial lawyer. So it was just, kind of like playing it by ear. And a lot of people suffered when you're playing things by ear. And so about 11 years ago or so, I moved to California because a buddy of mine is a very successful trial lawyer out there in California. His name's Nick Werker. And so he kind of encouraged me to do this because I went to the Los Angeles Trial Lawyers Convention called CALA back, I think in like 2013, 2012, and met a lot of plaintiffs lawyers there. And I was like, I need to become a plaintiffs lawyer because they looked like they had a lot better life than I had and made a lot more money to be the understatement of the century. And so a couple months later, I sold everything I had in Michigan and gave my practice to my partner and, moved to California and started studying for the California bar. And that took a few tries. Needless to say, it was a little challenging for me. But in the meantime, I started doing workshops at my apartment just to get to know people and to try to keep whatever skills I had, fresh and moving. And it was social. And it was fun. And that developed into a workshop that I taught for about 6 years before the pandemic called Trojan Horse method. I probably taught it over 100 times. And then the pandemic came along back in 2020. And of course, everything got shut down. And so I was just stuck at my apartment in LA with my, computer and by myself. And so I came, with some collaborative friends, we came up with the idea to start doing these webinars and kind of breaking down trials and interviewing great trial lawyers and how they got their results. And that gave me the opportunity to study so many great trial lawyers and really get them to mentor me. And I got to try to figure out how these people get these big verdicts consistently. Because, as a trial lawyer, that's how you're measured, by the size of your verdicts. And what I recognize is it takes three things to get big verdicts. What do you think those are, Nick? What three things have to come together to get the big verdicts?
I'm going to say, based on my limited knowledge, it's got to be your strategy.
Yes, you have to have trial strategy. So that's the second thing you need. You need, but the first thing you need to have a good case, because so many lawyers try these crap cases because they settle all their good ones and then they get punched in the face and then they're like, shell shocked to go to the courtroom. So first it starts off with a good case, and then you got to have appropriate trial strategy. So after 5 years of litigation, if you got 500 pieces of evidence, probably only 100 of those pieces are relevant for the jury to see. So good trial strategy says that's where you have judgment. Which 100 pieces does the jury need to see, and in which order, and how do I structure my opening statement? When do I talk about the damages? When do I talk about the plaintiff? When do I talk about what the defenses are and how I'm going to undermine them? This is all trial strategy. But the third thing that the great ones do is that they really focus on their connection with the jury. Once that trial gets started, it's not about the evidence, it's not about the law, it's all about their relationship and that connection with the jury. And once I realized that, and that connection is a soft skill, but it is a skill. And by the very nature that it's a skill, so now it's something that we can learn. It's not a quality or character trait. It's a skill. And so, in the last couple of years, that's what I've been really teaching is the skills of connection or nonverbal communication, the facial expressions, controlling them. So you have a warm face when you're talking to people, if you want that, but that will cause them to smile back at you or have a warm face back towards you, or a curious face if you ask a question. Now they know that you're interested in them. Or things like controlling your voice to speak more slowly, controlling your eye contact so that you make eye contact with somebody before you start talking to them. And and then even things like moving your hands and the ability to move your hands. Most lawyers speak with two hands by their sides, bouncing up and down, but you can only connect with one person at a time. So just keep using one hand and training yourself to keep it between yourself and the person you're trying to connect with, and a couple inches below your chin, so that way it's a visual cue that draws them into you too. So that's kind of a longer answer of how I got into this whole training world, but it's kind of what I do a lot of now.
I find it so interesting. You can only connect with one person at a time, and that might be a misconception for people, like trying to address an entire jury and making blanket statements, when instead they should be focusing on a one-on-one personal relationship with this person. So my question is, what are some of the more damaging mistakes that lawyers make when it comes to their in-trial performance in your experience?
They rely too much on their PowerPoints. So everything's a PowerPoint, which breaks connection, because if the jury's always looking at the screen or trying to read it, they're not connecting with you. So that's one thing I see a lot of. They point to the screen, but they're looking at the jury. So then the jury's looking at them, so they're not looking at the screen. So if you want the jury to look at the screen, you have to look at it. So controlling where the jury looks. And people really mess up their hands because they don't know what to do with them because they haven't thought about it, and they're nervous. Most people are nervous, even these experienced lawyers. I was just watching a trial on Court Review Network today, and it was really rough. The guy's hands are crossed in front of him. He's standing behind the podium. He's reading. He's literally reading parts of the opening. So things like that just kill connection, just kill it. And the game is all about connection. And not listening, because when lawyers are up there doing voir dire, so many times, because they're preoccupied with what's going on, or how is this question going to help me, or how is this answer help me, where's it going, and they don't really listen, and so then they don't follow up. But these are the most common mistakes, and they're most a result of nervousness. I know it's hard to believe that experienced trial lawyers or lawyers get real nervous up there, but they do. So those are the major mistakes.
Well, there's a lot at stake. So I think even if you're so prepared, it's always, if you're not nervous, I think you're a little, what's the word? Cocky, I guess, overconfident.
No, nerves are part of the game, but it's controlling those nerves.
Yep.
And training so that the nervousness doesn't affect your thinking. Because if you don't train, that nervousness can clog your thinking up. I've had it happen to myself, and that's why I train a lot, because that feeling sucks.
So aside from training, what are some of the traits and skills that you recommend honing in on that you notice that the best trial lawyers seem to have in common?
The best trial lawyers, well, some of the, they're curious. They're it's like, and they're very, the best of the best trial lawyers like love it. Like they love the challenge. They love the tunnel vision that going to trial requires. The fact that you don't think about anything else. You ignore your family. You ignore your health. Basically, everything is like it's an obsession. But that's what drives them, and that's why they're great at it, because it's the ability to focus like a laser, like so intensely. And so that's one, like, and you, I guess you have to be disciplined, because there's so many distractions, and and people have a lot of cases besides their work, but the ones that really get to the higher levels, all they work on is that trial for that couple months. That's it, round the clock, 12 hours. The discipline to get in at 6 in the morning and work until you can't, till you're exhausted. Just in the preparation, there's so much preparation. That's why it's just so much discipline, and so much focus. Those are, to me, and you have to be a leader too, because nobody can try a big case, any case of substance by themselves. And so you need a team around you that's handling all the, BS distractions, like, whatever motions the defense is filing, or, even filing motions yourself, but having somebody else do it, just burning up the bandwidth of the defense, distracting them, taking away their energy. You got to, like, you can't do the whole trial. Most people don't do the whole trial themselves. So you just got to be able to delegate. Okay, who's going to handle this? Who's going to handle that? Because it takes recuperation time, even in trial, because, you're not really doing anything physically, but you are, because at the end of trial, at the end of a day of trial, most people are just like, need to like take a couple hour break, because it's just so exhausting being in that courtroom under that kind of tension. So I think those are some of the key qualities or character traits that the people at the top of this game have. They have a lot of empathy too, most of them. Some don't. Some just fake it, but most are very empathetic, caring people. Some are very good actors, but you know what? If the jury can't tell the difference, then there is no difference.
So I'm not so familiar with the Trial Lawyers University, obviously, because I don't have I'm not a lawyer. I don't go to trial. Um, can you tell us a little bit about, like how you guys came to be? I know you said you started doing all these webinars, but how did the Trial Lawyers University start? And what is it that you guys really help lawyers do? What's the program like?
Well, it got started because I started doing all these webinars during the pandemic. And at the time, I was calling it case analysis, because that's kind of what we were doing, analyzing verdicts. But then over time, also realized that I was getting a chance to interview and get mentored by so many different great trial lawyers. And they had so many different philosophies and ways of doing things and styles that, I was like, this is really, a university, like a marketplace of ideas. And so people could come here and say, okay, this particular style or this particular methodology works for me, but this one doesn't. And because most of the trial organizations are mono theory, like reptile. If you don't do it the reptile way, you are a heathen, because there's only one way to do it in the reptile world. And like trial lawyers college, like everything's psychodrama. Like if you're not psychodramaing things all the time, then you're just not being a good TLC person. And so like these schools have these like just unit theories instead of like having all these theories come together and let people pick what works for them. So that was kind of the way that I looked up the URL online in like August of 2020, and nobody owned it. So I bought it for $9, and it was the greatest investment ever, because I bought Case Analysis website like 6 months earlier. That cost me like $2,600. So I was pretty excited to see it was only $900. And so that was like the webinar platform. But thank God the pandemic came to the end. And so then I thought, well, this was great online, but it'd be a lot better in person, because you can't really get to know people online if they're just tuning into webinars. So then we did our first big conference in Vegas in October of 2021. We had about 750 people there. So I was pretty stoked about that. I mean, I'd done a warm up in June, in LA. I say a warm up, like a practice one, because just kind of try to keep, like a beta testing some concepts. We had like 125 people there. I was pretty happy about that. But then we do a couple live conferences a year. We just did New York City about a month ago. But last year in Vegas, we had 1,200 people, and we did it at the Mandalay Bay. And so I really like the live event programs, because I go to a lot of live events myself. And I just think most of them are not done very well, because you got three groups of customers at these live events. You've got the participants. What do the participants want? They want to learn, right? They want to get better. So because they want to do better for themselves. They want to make more money. They want to win, and they want to win for their clients. And then you got the exhibitors and the vendors. What do they want? They want an opportunity to meet the lawyers, so that way they can show them what their goods are, and if the lawyers, that way they can do business, right? Nobody's buying anything from anybody if they don't know what it is and don't trust the person selling it. So you got to think about those folks. And then the speakers. What do the speakers want? They want a big stage. They want to teach, and they want an opportunity to meet all these lawyers and potentially co-counsel on cases, because somebody has a good case but doesn't know what to do with it, or they're not, they don't have the resources and the skills. They need a seasoned trial lawyer to help them, because that $20 million case might be only worth $5 million in settlement to the inexperienced lawyer, but quadruple that, and then they get the experience, and then they get the mentoring, and then they learn how to do it so they can go out and do it themselves. So those are the three groups of people that come together for these conferences. And the more that you can, I guess, organize it and make it so that all these people's needs are met to the highest level, then you have a successful conference. And and that's why, like at TLU conferences, there's always multiple lecture tracks. Like we have one coming up in Huntington Beach next June, and there'll be 4 lecture tracks with some of the top trialers in the country, like Nick Rowley, Brian Panish, Keith Mitnick, Joe Freed. I mean, the list, goes on and on. And then there'll be like 7 workshop breakout rooms. That's with one instructor with their like 5 to 10 students. So you get one-on-one training for, 3 hours. It's either a half day or full day workshops. Some are 2 days, like master classes. So you really get one instructor, one trial lawyer who really knows their stuff, focused in on it. So that's like the, kind of how we develop into a live training portion. And then on top of that, there's a virtual element to it called TLU on demand, because every lecture that's ever been done at any of my conferences has been recorded, and every webinar has always been recorded. And then I gather the transcripts, pleadings, and PowerPoints for all of these cases and kind of organize them into a digital library. So that way somebody wants to, somebody's working on a slip and fall case. Well, they got a dozen slip and fall cases they can look at the person's pleadings, their depositions, how they cross-examine experts, all that kind of stuff. And then, lastly is the boot camps I was talking about that I do like one time a month at my condo here in Vegas, or I go to law firms and do the training there. And that's just like, very small groups, 4 students per group, per instructor. There's only 2 instructors. So typically a group will have 7 or 8 students, and it's just, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., but with 6 weeks of preparation and training. So that way, when they show up, where they have to record themselves, every week, and we play it back and I comment, critique on it, and so they can get better, so that when they get here, they're ready to go. They're not, they're not like, okay, what are we going to do now? Just, it's all about the preparation. And so that is what, I guess the different aspects of Trial Lawyers University is. Like I also work on cases. So I was just down in Georgia consulting with a lawyer there for 3 days, helping her get ready for trial, practice her opening, practice her voir dires, with a focus group. So that way, she can work on these skills in kind of more realistic setting and on her particular case. So that too.
What are some of the things that you guys at the Trial Lawyers University really focus on to help increase the performance of trial attorneys? Like, can you give us an example of what a typical class might look like?
Well, a class here to work on the skills. A class is, like I said, 4 students. Person gets up there, presents for about 30 seconds, because we try to do it in small chunks, because there's so many skills that you have to that you're practicing simultaneously, like controlling your voice, controlling your face, controlling your eye contact, controlling your hand movement, and remembering what you want to say and look like you're not trying to do any of it, well, that takes a lot of practice. And so a person gets up there, even though they've been practicing for 6 weeks before they got here, still, then they get up and they present for 30 seconds, re-record it, then I hook it up to a big monitor, play it back, show them where they're doing things that break connection, whether it's looking at the floor, whether it's, saying good morning to everybody and having a serious face instead of like a warm face. When you say good morning to somebody that to show that you like them, right? Or that you mean to have a good morning instead of good morning, like this is going to suck, things like that. And so that way, because people have so much going on in their minds that the last thing they worry about is their face. And so their faces are like always like mono expression, never changes. That's a question. Does that make sense? You're like, I don't. Then it takes time for the audience to process it instead of like you have a curious face, which is like, like what time is it? Like, does this make sense? With a rising inflection, so there's just so much of these nuances to train that it just takes so many reps and so much practice. And, and it takes more than 3 days to practice it, but it's a good start because, I really encourage the people that come to my boot camps. I'm like, as soon as you get home, start teaching somebody, start teaching your colleagues, the people in your office, get some people together from your community. And they're always like, well, I don't really know it that well. I'm like, you know it better than they do. And by getting up there and putting yourself out there and teaching and trying to show somebody else the skills, you're going to get way better. It's just no two ways about it. If you focus, you're going to get way better. So it's really about a lot of reps. That's what we really give people. Because if you want to learn a skill, you got to do reps. And you got to have a coach. I mean, imagine learning how to play golf on your own. It's impossible. And, if you take a golf lesson, what's the first thing a coach is going to do? Show you how to hold the club, right? Because if you don't hold the stick right, everything else is screwed. And then how to stand, and then how to twist your torso, which is very unnatural. And they teach it in really small pieces, and they videotape you and they play it back and show you what's all messed up, and try to give you a correct mental representation of what it's supposed to look like. And then you get a couple swings and the ball goes somewhere decent. You're like, oh, that's exciting. And then what do? You go to the range by yourself the next day and you practice. And the great thing about golf is, it gives you immediate feedback. But there's a lot of clubs to learn, so you just practice using one club at a time and just try to get that one swing down. And then when you get that, move to the next club because you can only learn one skill at a time. And so that's what we really work on here is, practice and really disciplined, deliberate practice and reps over and over. And everybody's doing the same presentation, the same opening, the same voir dire, the same cross. So that way they're seeing the patterns are getting developed and burned into people's brains. So that way, because really all of learning is pattern recognition. And when when you're trained, you can see the patterns where the untrained mind only sees randomness. And that's the benefit of training.
I like that metaphor because I'm really bad at golf and I don't have a golf coach. I just insist on going once in a while with a few buddies. And I can hit the ball pretty far and I can hit the ball pretty straight. But if you get me like 100 to 120 yards away from the green, I'm either way over it or off to the side. I can't get on the green. I can putt. I mean, but you're right. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of reps. You don't just go golfing and expect to get better or expect to, shoot a 72 on your first try. It's just never going to happen.
And, so, and when you get up there, with your friends, then there's a pressure, and then that usually doesn't go so well for people when there's pressure. And, because like golf is such a mental game. It's crazy. It's crazy how big, how much of a mental game it is.
Yeah, and then you get frustrated and you try not to throw your clubs into the woods. That's me. We will be right back after this short ad.
I've been utilizing Answering Legal for my firm since 2015. And truth be told, it was a game changer for me. I can be anywhere, and I'm getting my phones answered by Answering Legal. A strategic partner, as I call Answering Legal, provides a great reward. What is that reward? It's time. Time for whatever I want to do. As a private practitioner, I would highly recommend Answering Legal to other private practitioners. Now, every call goes answered.
So I'm curious what your what your like demographic is. Would you say your university is largely designed for younger lawyers who are trying to learn all these skills that might not have any experience? Or do you find that more experienced attorneys can still benefit from taking your classes? Like maybe they have the misconceptions that you correct. Is it both, or is it more of one or the other?
It's both. And typically younger lawyers are somewhat easier to work with because they have less neural pathways carved in the neural pathways carved into their brains are not as deep. So it's less work to fill them in kind of and retrain it. Whereas sometimes older lawyers that have been doing this for 30 or 40 years, they're harder to, sometimes they get frustrated more easily, and they're harder to convince to put the time in because they haven't learned a new skill in so long that the idea of just practicing, hand movements or over and over is hard for them to accept. It's hard for them to digest, when I'm talking about learning the skills. But as far as, strategy, everybody's got to learn strategy, whether young or old. And, as far as the demographics, I've never really done an analysis. Okay, how many people are 1 to 5 years? How many are 5 to 10? It might be an interesting analysis, but the bottom line is if you're not constantly trying to learn at this game, you're in big trouble because things are always changing. And, people are coming up with new ideas, new ways of persuasion, new arguments, new like big data. That's changed a lot of things, doing these 500-person focus groups. I've seen so many people hit 8-figure verdicts who've never seen 8 figures before because they did a big data study and now they had the confidence to ask for 50 million when before maybe they were just asking for 5 million, and they have some objective criteria, outside their, because most lawyers that get asked for 10 or 20 million dollars in non-economic damages, they're just picking a number out of the sky. It's just picking a number out of the sky, whatever they think the value is of what's been taken, and they convince themselves of it. But it's easier to convince yourself of that when you asked 500 people and you said, these are the facts. This is what happened. What do you think the value is? And they say, oh, that's $51 million. Well, you can walk in with confidence and say, hey, folks, it's $51 million. I'm sorry. I wish it wasn't so much, but they took the guy's leg. This is the price. A debt's been created. Now it must be paid. That's just the way the world works if we're going to have some justice here. So, but it's lawyers all over from every demographic that really benefit a lot. And so the ones that really focus get the most out of it. And, my conferences are they're like, I consider them to be highly, really focused on education. Because people are learning new things and having epiphanies, then they're having fun. And when they're doing it together, now they're building community relationships. And when you're having these epiphanies with somebody that you don't know, but it's like, wow, can we believe we just got this idea? We just learned this. This could be worth $500,000 more in my next case. I can't wait. And then that's really exciting, right? Because let's just be honest. We're all motivated by money. It's like we want to do good, want to make a difference, but if you're not making any money doing it, it's not a business. It's a hobby, and it's not sustainable. You can't have a sustainable big idea that isn't, profit driven. It just doesn't work.
I'm curious, selfishly, I love success stories. I'm a very story driven person. So do you have any favorite success stories about attorneys who have attended your university?
Well, there's 2 in particular. So one is my friends Ray and Mohammed, and they tried this case that, Mohammed did my boot camp, and then I did a lot of work with them on the case, like focus groups and, preparation and some witness prep, but really focus groups on their voir dire and opening, just helping them practice and get the connection going. And they had this electrocution case that they've worked so hard for 5 years, had, over $1 million of their own money into it. I mean, crazy amount in cost because these things cost a lot of money to do. And they went to, I think they were in San Jose, somewhere around there, San Jose, and they got a $51 million verdict. But it was the biggest verdict in that county by $30 million ever. But they believed in themselves. And initially they had asked another lawyer to come help them and be the lead attorney. And then they decided, you know what, after that person was there for a few days doing voir dire. They figured that, you know what, we could do this ourselves. And so they parted ways because there was a mistrial and they got to redo the case, and they did it themselves. And they were in trial for a month, and they worked their asses off, and they got a great result for their client. And they're still fighting the case, of course, because nobody the defense doesn't just pay, but still, when you break through and you have that success, it helps redefine your career too. So that's one. And then the other one is my co-instructor. His name's Giorgio. He had his first trial, and because people are like, well, how can you have somebody teach trial skills if they don't have any trial experience? I'm like, because we're not teaching trial skills. We're teaching human skills, connection skills. And whether it's in trial, sure, in trial you got to connect, but you got to connect with people every day, because the truth is we all want everybody in our lives to do what we tell them to do when we tell them to do it. Whether it's your coworkers, your children, your parents, your judges, juries. We want them to do what we tell them to do when we tell them what to do it, right? But that all happens if they're connected with us. So connection is all of life. But Giorgio tried this case with his mom, and it was an arc flash, like an electrical burn case. And I think the top offer on that case was like $500,000. They had to do the trial remotely. And his mom had had a trial in about 13 years. And so his mom did my boot camp a couple of times. And of course, she was in my class the whole time because she's not going to be in class with her son. And they went to trial last year via Zoom, and they got a verdict for, and the guy only missed like 3 months of work, and there was no medical bills. Like they waived like $500,000 in medical bills, which is pretty gutsy right there for, a newer lawyer. And they got a $20.5 million verdict for their client. And then they got another $5 million for the loss of consortium. And that was all via Zoom. And Zoom's a lot harder to connect. Yesterday, my buddy, who's my protege, in my own way, like his name's Aria Tomasebi, him and his co-counsel, Alex Guerrero, who work at a good friend of mine's office, where my nephew works too, who just took the bar, but they just finished a month-long trial and got like a $2.2 million verdict on like a $500,000 offer, which was, really exciting because it's, because my friend Aria really wants to be a great trial lawyer, and he's getting his reps. It's like his 5th trial. And so, just they're getting better and better. And it's just so exciting to see, because I think people will do the work. I think most people will do the work. Most lawyers will do the work if they knew what work to do, if they knew what the work was. Like they're working really hard, but a lot of them are working on the wrong things. There's some programs that are weeks and weeks long where they don't really work on a lot of trial skills. They work on a lot of people skills. And so you can become a better person. You do a lot of therapy and a lot of, psychodrama, but you're not working on the eye contact, the facial expression, the hand movement, the voice control. Those people say, oh, that's all being manipulative. You just got to be your authentic self. And I'm like, I don't know what you call it, but these are skills, and skills need training and they need repetition. And it's whatever you do isn't just fine. Okay. Most people's presentations suck. All right. They just do. They're terrible at presenting. And once they get videotaped and it's pointed out, they would agree they're terrible at presenting. And the great part is they don't want to be, and everybody can change and get way better, which is exciting. Because when you get up there and you feel connected, as opposed to like, you're just on stage and you're just like a show. But instead of like when you're connected, it's like you're the leader of the group. These people are all with you. And it's a totally different feeling.
I find that lawyers feel a similar way about like sales, right? Like sales is a dirty word to lawyers, but it's like if you believe in yourself and you think that you're the best person suited for the job, you went to law school, you want to make money. Why wouldn't you want to sell yourself to your clients? They're like, no, I don't sell if they believe in me and my credential. Like, no, it's a skill. You can be better at things without having this negative comment. Like, I think lawyers have this weird tendency to want people to admire them for their like past accomplishments on paper. And it's this weird disconnect. So I appreciate that you said that.
And it is sales. Like sales, this friend of mine said like a year or two ago, he's like, why are you hesitant about selling? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you believe you have the greatest product in the world? I'm like, yes. Do you believe it's going to change people's lives? I'm like, yes. And he's like, do you believe it's a disservice for people if they don't, use your product? Like, and I'm like, yes. He's like, then you're not selling, you were helping, really, you're giving them information to change their lives, is what I really feel. Because, it'd be like, hey, Nick, I got this investment. If you invest, $1,000 in 1 year, you'll get back $20,000. But I'm hesitant to tell you about it because, I don't want you to feel like you need to put your money in here, And then like a year later, I tell you the idea. I was going to ask you to invest, but I didn't want you to feel pressure. It's like, you'd be like, pressure me. Let me, tell me about this. I need to know this. This is what friends do. Show me the opportunity is really what sales is, because I always think like, if you give somebody full information and they're not buying, well, either your product sucks or it's not a good fit. And so really it's about full information. What is this product? And if they have full information, honestly, TLU is the best, is the only choice if you really want to get better. Because I run this place, I run TLU because I want, to change the world, one trial lawyer at a time. And it's coming together at every conference to get a little bit better, because I get better at putting them together, and people get better at teaching and get more excited, and better trial lawyers and better teachers hopefully want to participate because they want to share. They want the feeling of such a great feeling with something that knowledge you've shared. You get a phone call on how it changed somebody else's life. Especially at the criminal stuff, when somebody calls me, like a public defender that I gave some of my voir dires to, or perhaps attended one of my programs, and they're like, oh, I just had this trial, and I never thought I could win it, and we won it, and this guy's at home and he was innocent, and I just can't believe it happened. Like, these are the kinds of things that make my eyes water, because I know what it's like to lose. I know what it's like to believe in somebody and lose, and it's the worst feeling in the world. And it's devastating, because like being a criminal defense lawyer is one of the toughest jobs, because it doesn't pay very much. It's extremely stressful. And if you lose for somebody you believe in, that they're innocent and they're rotting away in prison because you just weren't good enough, well, that's a heavy cross to carry. And that's, months of lost sleep. That's hell on earth. That guilt sucks. And that's one of the reasons why I try to do so much to help the public defenders and the criminal defense lawyers, because I know how hard their work is. And I know they have limited resources. They are, the last stand, because like 9 out of 10 people who are accused of a crime by the government have to use a public defender. So the better they get, the better justice in America will be.
I spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about my grandmother, but mostly because we have a good relationship. She has been running it's a personal injury practice in Brooklyn. And she's been working with this one lawyer. He's like a son to her. Now it's like 40 something years. And once in a while I'll call her up, and she always tells me about these great results that she gets for people. And I never understood growing up why people would call personal injury lawyers like ambulance chasers. Because in my mind, wouldn't you want the person who got injured to really like get help or get a benefit from, you know what I'm saying? Like, she does mostly, it's Brooklyn, so it's bicycle accidents. People get hit on bicycles, and
yeah, I was in New York because I just did a conference there, and I riding a bike in the bike lane. The people that live there are like, my lawyer friends like, you're an idiot. Do you know how many people get whacked on those bikes? People walk out, cars pull out. They're like, that is like gauntlet of death. Like, that's exciting, just for like a couple of miles, nothing crazy.
Nothing. Oh, you're crazy. So she'll call me up and tell me about these great results, but like, she really cares, and it makes me excited to meet people like you too, because you're helping these people get these results for injured people who need help. She brings them to our Hanukkah parties. His name was Dwayne. He was awesome. We were friends. We spent like 3 Hanukkahs together, and he went away to college, and she's still in touch with him. She calls him her grandson. She cares. The lawyers there really care. They got him a great result, and it's nice to see things like that happen, because like they don't want to pay. Make them pay more.
Right.
No,
and you really get a chance to help people put their lives back together. And those settlements or verdicts, honestly, they're as much for the defendant, the person who caused the injury, as they are for the person that's hurt. Because if you accidentally hurt somebody, wouldn't you want them to be taken care of as best as you could? Like, if you caused a crash and now somebody's going to walk in pain the rest of your life, and you could have empathy, and let's say you had a $2 million policy, Wouldn't you tell your insurance company, pay that policy? That's why I pay those premiums. Take care of this person. I don't want, you to put up your best efforts and try to defeat the case, and now they get nothing, and now I got to live with the guilt. That's horrible. So,
what am I paying all this money for? So,
right.
If
just money,
it's just money. If any lawyers are watching this who want to check out the Trial Lawyers University for themselves, how can they do so? Where should they go? How do they get in touch with you? What does it look like?
Well, the domain is triallawyeruniversity.com. My email is dan@triallawyeruniversity.com. And my cell phone is 248-808-3130. So any of those means, obviously email and cell phone are direct, but informationally, triallawyeruniversity.com has all the different programs, workshops, we do a podcast now, webinar access. So it has everything on it at the one domain, everything on it. So if everybody needs me, and and these conferences we do, if somebody is, in such a position, either they're a newer lawyer or things have happened and they truly can't afford to, the tuition for these programs, please email, call me, let me know, and I will work with you to make sure that lack of financial resources is not an obstacle to becoming a better trial lawyer.
Dan, thanks so much for joining the show today. I appreciate it. I want to give a special thank you to all of our listeners. We hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we will be back with another episode of Everything Except the Law soon. Be sure to check out previous episodes of the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the Answering Legal YouTube channel. Links to everything we just discussed, including the website where you can sign up for Trial Lawyers University, Dan's personal cell phone, and his email will be listed in the description of this episode. And thank you again, Dan. Appreciate you.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Appreciate being on.